In my senior year of high school, something happened that I'll never forget. Our school was known for its love of football games. The whole town would come alive on game nights, with the bright lights of the field cutting through the darkness and the sounds of cheering filling the air. My friend JJ and I were part of this excitement, and one particular game during the season stands out for its eerie turn of events. We decided to invite our classmates Kayla and Ashley to join us at a game. They were thrilled, and we planned to meet up after school. JJ came to pick me up in his old but reliable car, and then we went to get Kayla and Ashley. There was an air of excitement as we drove to the school, talking and laughing about the upcoming game. We sneaked some drinks into the game, feeling rebellious and carefree. Our spirits were high as we climbed to the top of the bleachers, securing a great spot to watch the game. The game started with the usual energy, but as the evening wore on, things took a turn. Our team, usually the star of the league, was losing badly. One by one, disappointed fans began to leave. But we decided to stay, planning to make the most of the night by hanging out on the field after the game. The game finally ended, and with the loss, the field quickly emptied. The bright field lights flickered and then turned off, plunging the stadium into darkness. The sudden change was unsettling, but we were determined to enjoy our night. We lay on the field, looking up at the stars, feeling the cool night air. JJ, ever the adventurous one, suggested we explore the woods bordering the football field. Kayla and Ashley were hesitant, their laughter turning nervous. JJ and I, eager to inject some excitement into the night, playfully dashed into the woods, hoping the girls would follow. And they did, albeit reluctantly. The woods were a stark contrast to the open field we had just left. The trees loomed tall and close, their branches casting eerie shadows in the faint moonlight. JJ and I, in a mischievous spirit, decided to hide from the girls, hoping to give them a small scare. But our playful mood was soon shattered. As we crouched behind a bush, JJ suddenly grabbed my arm, his eyes wide with fear. He pointed ahead, and my gaze followed. There, standing between two trees, was a tall, dark figure. It was too dark to make out details, but the figure was unmistakably human and unnervingly large. Then, a woman's voice pierced the silence, saying, "We shouldn't be there." The voice was cold and unwelcoming, sending shivers down my spine. The figure seemed to grow larger and closer, yet eerily. There were no sounds of movement. Fear gripped us, and we turned to run back to the field, calling for Kayla and Ashley. We found them quickly, their faces etched with fear and confusion. We urged them to follow us to the car, not stopping to explain until we were safely inside. Breathless and shaken, we recounted the sight of the tall woman in the woods. JJ, usually skeptical of anything supernatural, admitted that he would have thought it was a ghost if I hadn't seen it too. The girls were visibly shaken, struggling to understand why an older woman would be in the woods alone at night. We drove to JJ's house in silence, each lost in our thoughts about the night's eerie encounter. The sense of fear lingered, even as we tried to move past it. What we saw in the woods that night remained a mystery, a haunting memory that none of us could fully explain. That night at JJ's house was a mix of nerves and attempts to distract ourselves from what we had experienced. We talked, listened to music, and tried to laugh it off, but the image of the towering figure in the woods stayed with us. It was a reminder that the world had mysteries and terrors that defied explanation, a lesson that stayed with me long after high school ended. 2. When I was 15 and a sophomore in high school, something quite unsettling happened. Our lunch classes were random, and that year, I only had my friends Liam and Mike in my lunch period. A few months into the school year, a new kid arrived in my first period astronomy class. Our teacher, known for his jokes, asked the new kid to introduce himself. His name was Craig. Craig sat next to me, the only open desk being in the back row. As class hadn't started, we began chatting. He seemed okay at first, a bit eager to make friends, but nothing too unusual. However, as we got assigned to work together on a class project, I began to feel a bit uneasy. Craig's sense of humor was off-putting, filled with inappropriate jokes and a weird laugh. Despite my discomfort, we exchanged numbers for the project. Lunchtime rolled around, and with Mike absent, it was just Liam and me at our table. Suddenly, Craig appeared, taking a seat next to me and patting my shoulder. I was inwardly groaning, realizing he'd probably sit with us every day now. Liam was initially polite, but even he started to pick up on Craig's strangeness. Craig's comments were dark and weird, and it was clear something was off about him. After school, as I walked home planning the evening with friends, Craig texted me, asking me to turn around. There he was, jogging down the sidewalk towards me. Reluctantly, I waited for him. He suggested working on our project over some beers, but I declined, mentioning plans with friends. When he tried to invite himself, I made up an excuse about my friend's mom not allowing strangers. As we walked, I couldn't help but feel like he was following me home. And he did. I said goodbye and went inside, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. My friends in our group chat agreed Craig was weird. Later, he texted me about a police car outside my house. It was a lie. He was just trying to see if I was home. When I confronted him, he got offended. I was getting increasingly worried about his obsessive behavior. The next day, I was at Liam's house when Craig tried calling me. I ignored it, dreading the next encounter at school. Returning home late, I found my family out. I locked the door and settled in my room. Then, the back doorbell rang. Expecting my sister, I was shocked to find no one there, only to hear a noise indicating someone was hiding. It was Craig again. I threatened to call the police, and he left. I shared screenshots of his messages with my family and friends, and then informed the school. The school reached out to Craig's parents, revealing a pattern of his troubling behavior at previous schools. He seemed to always get into trouble for bothering people. He didn't show up to class again, and I think he was transferred to another school.
My experience during my final year of high school was something straight out of a mystery novel. Being a year older than my classmates due to being held back, I already felt a bit out of place. Our school, a small-knit, close-knit community, was combined middle school and high school, which meant everyone knew everyone. On the first day of the new school year, during study hall, I noticed a new face. He was sitting alone, looking out of place. Curious and wanting to be friendly, I approached him. He introduced himself as Chester, a new student who had moved to the area. I took it upon myself to show him around, pointing out classrooms, the cafeteria, and the gym. As we walked, he asked typical questions at first, like how long I'd been at the school and where certain rooms were. But then his questions became odd, particularly when he asked me for my home address and Snapchat. The new request for my address was a red flag, but I casually brushed it off and gave him my Snapchat, thinking it was harmless. Later that day, during English class, I caught Chester staring at me from across the room. He gestured for me to come over, but I was engrossed in the lesson and chose to ignore him. Moments later, my phone buzzed with a message from him on Snapchat, urging me to follow him. I watched as he got permission to leave the room. My curiosity piqued. I waited a few minutes before asking to go to the restroom, using the opportunity to follow him discreetly. I trailed him from a distance, watching as he moved with an eerie slowness down the hallway. He turned down a corridor that was rarely used, mainly for storage and offices. Then, to my shock, he entered the door leading to the school's basement. The basement was a place of rumors and old stories among the students, and no one ever really went down there. I hesitated, feeling a mix of fear and curiosity. Ultimately, my sense of caution won out, and I decided not to follow him down into the basement. Instead, I returned to class. Back in class, my phone buzzed again. It was Chester, first sending a message asking why I hadn't followed him. Then a picture of him in the basement eating a sandwich that looked quite unappetizing. He sent another message, pressing me to join him. By now, I was thoroughly creeped out. I replied, asking him to leave me alone, and blocked him. That evening, I was wrapping up my homework. I received a Snapchat friend request from an account named "Why Didn't You Enter the Basement?" It was Chester again. I blocked it, only to receive another request, this from a different account. "Why'd you block me?" I blocked that too. But then came a more ominous message from an account named, "I know where you live," followed by, "I'm right outside your house." Just then, I heard the sound of a window breaking downstairs. Panic set in. I called the police, explaining the situation, and hid in the hallway closet. Through the slits in the closet door, I saw him, Chester, standing at the end of the hallway. He didn't seem to know where I was hiding, but the terror of the moment was overwhelming. After these tense few moments, the police arrived. By then, Chester had vanished. They found that he had escaped through a basement window. The next day, I reported the incident to the school principal. What he told me sent chills down my spine. There was no other student named Chester at the school. They had no records of him, and camera footage showed he had snuck in through a back entrance and blended in with the students. I never saw Chester at school again, and the police never updated me on the situation. The memory of that night and the unexplained motives of Chester haunted me. Why did he want to go to the basement? What were his intentions? These questions lingered in my mind, a disturbing reminder of how quickly a seemingly normal day can turn into a nightmare.